I wasn't going to do this out here. I was going to wait till I got home, but I didn't do this. I have recently come across a creator called Ripzilla. He's been on YouTube for about 5 years. Now, morning. A lot of what he does is very controversial. He calls out a lot of creators and a lot of other people for their rubbish behaviour. So, walking with one hand. The thing is, so many people that he calls out use this mindset of I had a bad childhood, or I have trauma or mental health issues. That's the reason I did what I did. I'm not a bad person. There's a real issue with that defence. How many of us in our lifetime have heard it from people around us, from drug addicts, from alcoholics, from pretty much anyone and everyone who wants to justify behaviour that, quite frankly, they cannot justify. They all will turn around and say that they've had trauma of some kind in some way. They've either had a really rubbish childhood, traumatic childhood, they've gone through some kind of trauma, they've got mental health issues, they've got mental health disorders, they've got neurological issues, they've got, they'll come up with a reason or a list of excuses, and it usually involves trauma, mental health issues, and it's all a way to justify why they behave the way they do. Now, anyone who does this just wants to carry on behaving that way. They never want to acknowledge that they've ever done anything bad in their life. They want to be perpetual victims of harm. They want to constantly be gaining sympathy from those around them because something bad happened to them in their life. And that's why they drink, that's why they take drugs, that's why they're addicts. Because if this bad thing didn't happen, they wouldn't need to be an addict and they wouldn't have to they wouldn't have to drink. And if this bad thing didn't happen to them, they wouldn't have mental health issues or a mental health disorder. And instead of trying to get the help they need, trying to help themselves or trying to find a way to, make their life easier. Now, I'm not saying that they haven't had issues in their past, they haven't gone through trauma or anything like that, but it doesn't justify bad behaviour. It doesn't justify drug use, it doesn't justify alcohol abuse, because through those conditions and through that behaviour comes criminal activities usually, and if they have kids, usually neglect as well. And we've all been on the other end of it somewhere along the line. They're constant victims. They don't want to take responsibility for their own self. See, when you have that kind of trauma, you have that kind of issue, as hard as it is, we all know it's not easy. And we all know that the concept of counselling, therapy, psychotherapy, it's not a cure, and it's not a quick fix. It can take years to really feel better, to really say that you're over it. But the reality thing is, you'll never truly be over anything that's happened to you, especially if it's really evil and really bad. But you'll learn to live with it, and you'll learn to survive and thrive in society with that kind of help. And if it means going on medication, it means going on medication, and it's no shame in that. But to justify behaviours that are illegal, immoral, or dodgy, and there are immoral and dodgy ones that can be used to, questionable behaviours. Like if you're teenagers and you get into issues like, you can be, drug use. You can be peer pressured into doing almost anything. You're vulnerable. It's questionable and it's dodgy. Yeah, there's a lot of weird things that happen with the laws when you're young. It doesn't justify the behaviours, but young people, vulnerable people that are taken advantage of because of things that have happened to them by other people. There are many questionable ways in which they can be helped, but there are weird laws surrounding them in many ways. It's strange, especially when it comes to teenagers. There are loopholes, and we all know it. Teenagers are generally given a lot more slack. When they break laws, they're given a lot more leeway when they get into that kind of trouble. Because they don't want to, really be put on that path. They want to help them as much as they can. And if they don't have to, treat them like hardcore criminals, they really won't, they'll try to help them as much as humanly possible, especially if they know that somebody else is behind their behaviour and they're being taken advantage of. But when we come into adulthood and we're still proclaiming that, when we were 7, something bad happened, therefore I must still take drugs and I must still drink, and it's the reason I can't behave like a human being. That they're just avoiding responsibility. They don't want the help. They don't want to get better, most of them. They've been offered it. They've probably gone through a lot of help somewhere along the line. They've chosen to ignore it, some of them. They've relapsed because the help they were offered didn't help, and they need other things put in place. They just slip through the net. But when you don't want to help yourself, you will do anything and everything to avoid responsibility. But using mental health, using addiction to remove yourself from any responsibility, it's not the way to go. And anybody who does that somebody to force them to wake up, show them that there's a better way, that they can. It's hard, it is hard, because you can't force somebody to take responsibility for their lives. But if they're destroying other people in the process, then not only society but the law needs to change and help these people, or even force them, put them in a proper rehab centre till they are on the right path, and then actually when they're out, follow up with them. Don't just leave them to the wolves, because it's part of the reason why they end up back on the addictions, back in that kind of life, is because nobody really follows up with them afterwards, and they're left to their own devices. It's the wrong way to help them. Help them by putting them in the rehab centres by law, and then keep an eye on them. Society, social services need to be there. There needs to be a branch of social services that specifically is there to help them survive and thrive after. I know it's not an ideal world, and I know that it's never going to be easy to help these people, and I know that some people just don't want help, but people should never justify their behaviours. Should never justify behaviour just because they've had a rough life. Too many people have had a rough life and don't behave like that. Just doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. Anyway, I am going to go. I'm almost at my uncle's. I know it's a bit of a weird one considering I'm in the middle of the street, but kind of was in my head, and as I was talking to myself anyway and having this conversation in the middle of the street in my own head, and people were looking at me funny, I thought I would at least look funny for a reason. I'm gonna let you guys go. Bye.